第二个问题，我想问卢森可以解释还是孔子不天的问题啊？对，你谈到那个孔子didn't talk about the heaven，the way of heaven， 天道，那然后去说这个天就是天对孔子来说，跟他的那个伦理的思想其实不是非常的一个重要性。对，那所以在你的看法里面，孔子他不太谈天道，也可以说明其实天这个对于孔子来说，他似乎只是谈天的时候，只是要去谈他的那个他的道德的选择这些问题。但是我想这里面有一个对于天道的解释，就是说那个孔子只跟我说孔子不太谈天道，但是一种解释是这个天道可能指的是吉凶祸福这些东西，比如说 Unintended many scars 跟那个天道就是这个对，就是吉凶祸福，所以孔子不谈这个，但是孔子可能在《论语》里面谈了天，对，所以说那些天我们还是可以看得出来，好像有一种一些 personality， 那个就是 有一些那个，对，所以你也有提到一些这个，所以天道跟天是不是还是不一样的？在孔子的意思。
所以我说，我觉得天道跟天绝对是不一样的。我基本是天道在《道德经》后几篇就常常出现啊。我觉得这个是可能真的就是就天文或者吉凶的东西啊。但是天我完全不否认，它对孔子来说有人格的一层面，但是他对一个人格是到底是一个什么东西？因为这就不一样了，因为他所谓的人格一定是以无为为主啊，所以天的人格也以无为为主，就是说人格以非人格为主，人格是在一个非人格的一个基础而存在的，就算在天的。所以我觉得我并不觉得他完全就投射一个天，我觉得他真的觉得有一个天存在，但是那个天就是包括所有的祖先，包括他们的德所培养出来的气等等，还有一些影响力，但是它不是已知的，不是一时创造出来。周公啊、文王、武王都好像在铸到那个天的总体来，然后影响到天，天也在演变，我觉得，但是它可以跟天联系，天会支持它的，对不对？就像 Hollywood 会支持我做这个动作片，对吧？所以，但是它有它的人格一层面的，这个绝对是的。
要不要再问问题？OK， 好。So yeah, then thank you for the link. Maybe we just open the floor and yeah, please. Yeah, 马同学，然后 Christian， 然后发言。你现在问马同学。
Several questions, please. This is French. First, I think about sometimes use Chinese. 你就是有为的，我们应该无为，或者是无为为本，有为为末。我觉得这个应该是 metaphysics 上面的 statement。然后我们应该无为的话，这个应该是 ethical 上面的。I don't know. If I'm thinking this wrong, please correct me. The second one, I'm trying to know what's your theory about the religion and the consciousness. Maybe I didn't hear very clearly. Sorry for that. And next one I want to know, can you explain it to me? What's the difference between godliness and energy?
Energy.
Energy.
中文怎么说？
安纳奇。
五正辅助语嘛。
Yeah.
Okay.
And the next one is about the 多项.
Yeah.
I think about knowing and not knowing. In my opinion, it is like to know is not to know. But your explanation is like knowing is not how to know. I think knowing is a consciousness. How to know is the mind. It's my opinion. I'm just trying to please explain that to me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Want to respond?
Yeah. Let me try. So 第一个问题是说那个以无为为本，以无为为末世形上学。
Ethics, 2 different.
Yeah. 我觉得都有了，所以我刚才说那4种嘛，比如说荀子那种 compensatory 弥补性的无神论无为论啊，就是在伦理学上面呢是以有为为终极为目的有为，但是在形上学是以无为为本。但是很多上依我看来，孔孟 is a little is great, but I still think definitely the Taoists, definitely the Chinese Buddhists, 无论在形上学，在伦理学，都是以无为为终极至上，是最高的价值啦。那其实我有提到，就是孔子其实所以那种也算是伦理学无为的一个目标。OK， 但是天和眼在那是形上学的，或者宇宙论。OK， 第二个问题是
Theory of religion.
Theory of religion。所以我这个说不上一个宗教理论，我这是初步的要探讨这个问题，所以我这是你问的是宗教性跟意识。
Religion and consciousness.
Yes. 我基本的概念就是重新脉络化是把任何一个有限性的有形的定位一个identity 本质会提供给它更大或者另外一个脉络，它就会给它另外一个意义了。那个意义的双重意义一出现，就是我所谓的宗教，它是相对于世俗的嘛，所以是要先有一个世俗，然后提出一个另外的不明显的 ，I don't say spiritual, I just say 不明显 ，okay, non-obvious other context of some kind. Somebody claims there's a God watching you, or there's karma and 轮回 or something, or there's人体在流行之类的 something that not everyone agrees on, right? 不是公认的东西啦，不是明显的东西，有点提出来那种东西，把所有的经验里头的意义给改变了。That's what I mean. But I don't know if that's maybe too broad, maybe it's too narrow. I'm just I want to include both a theory about creator God and a theory about like Tao or a theory about karma in the same definition, right? Those things are very different. They're not always about the origin of the universe. They're not always about the meaning of life because, or at least, let's say a theory of karma in a backwards way is about the meaning of life, but in a certain way it's the claim that the idea of meaning is mistaken. And the third question.
Called anarchy.
Anarchy, yes. 是宇宙性的无政府主义吧？但是宇宙性的无政府主义宇宙是没有政府的。但是那后来是不是社会要有政府没有政府？那是就是 emulative 弥补性的或者同形性的 isomorphic。
But in human history, there's anarchy happened before. I don't know. It is kind of a theory, in your opinion, compared with the godless.
Well, anarchy is a political theory, has a special set of parameters, and that would apply to the ethical or the human level, the social level. And as I said, within the context of an ultimately anarchic universe, there's emergent order, right? There's your way to you way, right? And there can be pockets of it. That's what Guoshang is saying, right? That way comes from the way. So that means there's plenty of room for. In fact, I would say, maybe Huang Lao Taoists kind of go this route, right? They want to say there's Tian, it's Wu Wei, but there's a second stage where there's some rule boundedness, but they're still circumscribed by a larger meaninglessness or anarchy, right? Same goes for Shangdi, right? You could have a Shangdi which emerges from sort of Yuan Qi or something like that, right? Sort of Yu Huangdadi kind of thing, right? And he's controlling things now, more or less, but there's still something beyond him.
My die.
Right? Yeah, right. So that thing that's beyond him is beyond his control.
So, Christian.
Yeah. Thank you. Two little points, questions. One is you kind of depicted it a little bit that animism comes out of this news.
Vice versa.
Or vice versa. Okay. But it seems to me that these two are disconnected. Okay. Because you have animism in China. Right. And you don't want the news here. So I think they're disconnected. I mean, they can come together, but not one comes out of the other.
No, I totally agree. I do think one comes out of the other. What I said, what I tried to say was that when you have news, what you have is literate culture taking up animism, which is more or less universal in primitive cultures, and theorizing it, taking it seriously.
And they have the purpose in there.
Right, and so animism, which is everywhere, is only in a certain place called Greece taken up and taken seriously as an intellectual theory.
Okay, then that's okay. And the other one is, about this ambiguity problem. And what evidence do you have to think that it is ontological, to make it a bit more precise? Like in Aristotle, you have this nice saying that something cannot be so-and-so and not so-and-so at the same time and in the same respect. So this is kind of epistemological, and of course it's problematic at the same time. What are these things? But I think that's a good point. But you want a little more. You want to say, well, the thing is in itself ambiguous, but that's something where I don't go onto that boat. Because you came here by plane, and you want the plane to be safe and not ambiguous. You want the computer programs to be 100% and not 99.9.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you can't land safely. So
that's why we should be suspicious of that as an ultimate principle of ontology.
Yeah,
because we want that, we need that. Right?
But why do you think we have? What evidence do you have to think that things are in themselves ambiguous? Okay. This is a very important point.
It is. That is the ultimate, most important point, in my opinion.
I think so, yes. So I want to push you on that.
Okay. So we started a little bit to talk about this downstairs. Yeah. First of all, I would say that the law of non-contradiction is a consequence of essentialism, not the other way around. So it is because you start with an idea that there is a single story about the essences, that there's a privileged way to carve up the world, that the idea of in the same respect and at the same time can be non-circular. I think you need God to do that. I don't see how Aristotle... Well, he still has that same epistemological role, you could say, for God, I would say. So, I've argued law of non-contradictions, what we were talking about downstairs, is at best transcendental. One thing it is not is ontological. It cannot give ontological information because it is circular. And by that I mean, it's like saying, I can know with certainty that out in deep outer space, there are never more than 12 inches to a foot. And I'm absolutely sure of that. Because when I get to the 13th inch, I just call that the next foot. Right? It's the same thing with the law of non-contradiction. When I get something that contradicts something, I say, oh, that's a different respect. or I say, oh, that's a different time. So by definition, I can't have a contradictory ontological being.
It's not only by definition. Once you run into a contradiction, you make an effort, you discover, you don't define, you discover another perspective.
You're forced to.
That's how we make
You're forced to. If you don't discover it, you simply you have to postpone it. You say, well,
but that is because there is ambiguity is non-ontological.
no, that's because we're assuming that it's not.
But it's
So if we
It's
don't
working.
discover, if we
It's working.
we simply call the aspect. No, it's not working. I mean, I don't want to play the quantum physics card or anything, but when you talk about macro level, so I mean, actually, let me press that a little more. If we discover something that we don't know how to name the aspect, we simply name it the aspect wherein that contradiction resides. Right? We just say it has. There are different respects or different aspects or different sides or senses, sometimes we'll say, right? In one sense, it's molecules. In another sense, it's something else. What those are is, and this is a point I take out of Zhuangzi 3 Tiantai, okay, which is we have just different views at different times and from different sides of a thing. And without some idea of an authorized, authoritative adjudicator to say, oh, some of those are illusions and some of them are real. Right? These are different views, different ways of doing things, and somehow we have to reduce some to others of them. We do that according to the law of contradiction. And so if we use that process to decide what is and isn't contradictory, I think that's circular. I say that if we don't, because we don't know that this is one thing, right? We define this is a cup and this is a table because that's what the law of non-contradiction says. But if I just define this and all the rest of the universe,
it's also very useful. You want to pick up the cup, you can
that's
pick up
why we do it.
conventions.
That's why we do it. That's my point.
But that's why I think we have a point of thinking that this many point of perspective is there.
No, I'd say that's why I say we can never get rid of Yole, and we can never get rid of determination. We can never get rid of conventional truth, to use a Buddhist term. We need it. We'll need it in social dimensions. The question is, how do different versions of conventional truth relate to one another? Right? Are they in the relation of reality to appearance, of error to truth? Or are they in some relation of partial and whole, let's say? Or are they in some relation of ends and means? Or are they in some relation of convertibility, maybe? And so there's a lot of different ways. We're always going to have our airplanes and computers, right? Those are going to be within a given system of consistency. The question is, what about the edges of that system? Where does it fade out into? And they all do, right? I mean, there's a good Kantian, there's a formal Kantian, things like this, I guess. But somewhere the system, once it's totalized, made unconditional, breaks down. I'm thinking the antinomies, let's say, right? In the first critique of Kant, right? So if we really take seriously full determinate universe thing in itself, in our knowledge, it breaks down. I think that would be the
maybe just very, I find it very interesting, and just a follow-up question, because I found this idea of godless is very interesting, and your perspective is very clear, but sometimes I feel that you should also more care about the social and political dimensions of these notions. Yes, this was my critic, just to make this point.
Yes.
Because you talk about Christian, I wonder how the US, the audience would react to such a provocation, I guess. The Tea Party and the rightists, and I don't know, there are a lot of people out there Christians would be very offended, I suppose. And, so the social religion is also a social reality, a social fact. And then, just for example, if we follow somebody like Charles Taylor, then he thinks that Christianity is a necessary part of this greater narrative of Western civilization. It has been there, it has been a historical experience, and this historical experience has pushed us into modernity somehow. The whole story is very complex, but I think Hegel would certainly, and Pippin and many others would follow this. And the details are difficult to figure out, but the story is more or less that Christianity has been important to modernity, so, and in particular Protestant revolution. So, and somebody like City Wei in Hong Kong, he recently wrote in his new book, wrote that in China we are lacking this idea of Protestant revolution. We need a Protestant revolution where the individual finally is emancipated. So is somehow gets this final authority and freedom and equality are realized. So just to make a provocative point, you see, to understand Taoism and Buddhism as in a very postmodern light, and the law of contradiction I tend to think that there is something out there, and there are certain social facts and metaphysical facts which we can't just dissolve into ambiguity.
Yeah. Well, no,
so
I mean,
it's still a very broad point, but how would you, if we were living in such a worldview, Buddhist, Taoist worldview, could we ever come out? Is progress possible? For example, for Guoxiang, is it a good beef? What I've always been found disturbing about Guoxiang is how easy he can integrate this Taoist vision of ambiguity, of identities, into a very Confucian and very static social system. Inequality of the sexes, between men and women, and hierarchy, and this strong hierarchical notion behind all these texts.
Well, okay, the simplest point first. Okay, so the last thing you said, I mean, again, just to stress this, I mean, ultimate ontological ambiguity does not imply that there are not huge and internally authoritative pockets of organization and normativity, okay, and order, and determinacy and disambiguation. As I said, there's got to be Fenbia, there's got to be Yoga. It's a question of, and in the Chinese systems, Guoxiang is an example. He has one, but there are a lot of different ways this is construed. It's funny you say that, because you say, well, Guoxiang affirms the existing status quo order, which is an order you find undesirable. But one thing Guoxiang would also affirm progress. Okay, he cannot underwrite it. He cannot encourage it any more than he can encourage that status quo. Guoxiang has pulled away from either side of that critique. So I agree with you there. It can't produce modernity. Now, the larger question, the bigger social question. I mean, so social facts out there, yes, provisionally. And this is important, though, because this means any society. I do object to. I do think it's a theistic holdover to think that those social facts are non-negotiable. And I think Hegel got this very wrong after 1807. Okay, which is to say, it's got a zeitgeist notion. I think that, on the contrary, I have an omnicentric view. I would propose an omnicentric version of individualism. So not unicentric holism, which is collectivist, and not individualism, which is atomist, but omnicentric holism, which means any collective totality is seen from variable and infinitely variable points of view at the same time. They're interconnected, though. They have definite relations, different views on the same. It's a little more Leibnizy, of course, right? Which, of course, is closely related to a Neo-Confucian and Chinese Buddhist view, right? Kind of Huayan view and Tiantai view. So on that view, there is something out there, but it is not uniquely determined in a single God's eye way. If you start to talk about the zeitgeist, if you start to talk about social facts as ultimately, non-negotiably, once and for all, one way or another, then I think you've got a problem. But I do think we talk about how determinacy overcomes itself into another determinacy. And you are talking about development. You're talking about progress, but not progress toward a goal. So it's the teleological aspect of that, and I do think there's something troublingly circular. I do not assume that modernity is great, or that it's bad, or that it's bad. Okay, so I like airplanes, I like my computer, but it's circular that I like them. I like them because I have them, and my liking them doesn't make them right. Okay, and all of our liking them doesn't make them right either. Okay, so I would prefer to just say. So let me make one more remark about this, about ultimate values and social implications. The one thing that I feel strongly about in terms of social implications is a very great fear of monolithic values. So what I see in the expansion of modernity, or the aggressive, cancerous growth of Christianity in the world now, to be provocative again, is the kind of cultural genocide of other possible points of view.
You're right.
Yeah. So, and it becomes more and more difficult even to describe them, right? So to talk about an Wu-Wei-Wei-Ben system almost becomes impossible to grasp. And I look at this as the same way I look at, like, the extinction of plants in the rainforest. Yeah. Right. We don't know what they are good for yet. Right. They may be important for medicines, but once they're extinct, they're gone.
Michael has
follow
a
up
question.
有关 about religion and social political application.
I think I don't know if you noticed that we mentioned religion, or you have four models: theism and or atheism. Do you notice that human there is always there? Right? So it seems to me that the whole theory there is like a human base. So how can we have something religious, but why don't we consider humanness idea?
It's an interesting question.
Yeah, but I noticed that you always have human there.
Yes.
And that's why it's kind of misleading that there got to be some kind of social political application, because human there is essential. Okay. So
I agree.
So I that's my first concern, worry that why we must concern human there as essential. If it's a kind of humanless world, then how about your religion idea there? Would that be different? Second one.
A lot different.
Okay. Second one. Even we talk about human, we still need to think about 人, whether it's individual. Let's take another term, agent. If it's individual agent, or if it is group agent. Okay, not a human as a general term. It can be applied to every human, but I mean group agents. That's another right now a hot issue about group agency. Okay, so when we consider even, we use the 人, human as the basis. Should we consider it from different angle? Individual agent or group agent? That could be change the the whole scene there.
So for your first question, yes, every one of those four models are all in terms of Tianren constantly. The reason for that is that, as far as I know, so far, from what I've observed in the world, the only religions I've encountered are conceptions of human beings. So without human beings, as far as I know, there's no religion. Maybe other things have their own religion, maybe there'd be another religion without us, but never heard of such a thing. So I'm just assuming that humans exist, and every single religion I've ever heard of has been something that a human being has told me about. And that also, why we should care about that is for exactly the same reason. I'm assuming there that we are human beings. Now, if it's shown that we're not, and we're raccoons or something else, then I would say we should care about raccoons. I think it's completely self-centered. Okay, so whatever it is we are, I think that's going to be the thing we're concerned about, the relation between that and the cosmos. Doesn't matter if it's humans. So I'm just assuming we're humans. Second question, that's a very good point. Yes, it is a useful distinction to say between individual agents, social agents. Ren, right, is ambiguous in Chinese and can refer both ways. And I think it does. I mean, this is a very broad strokes paper. Definitely, for example, in Xunzi's case, right? I put Xunzi and existentialism in the same category, right? But this is exactly one of the key ways in which they differ. They both see a meaningless cosmos, I would claim, and they both think man has to make values and make meaning for himself. But in Xunzi's case, it's very much collectively, right? It's according to a socially organized activity, and existentialism, it's individual. So obviously, yeah, there's going to be much more finely grained distinctions today, and those will make, I agree, a huge difference. Yes.
Thank you. Fabio.
Yes, I have several questions. The first is following up Kai's question on modernity and transcendence, Christianity. There has been a long discussion on transcendence and immanence in the Chinese context, and I somehow wonder how you situate your position in this discussion. As you know, in the Chinese context of the 20th century, there has long been this conviction that without transcendence and without maybe even Christianity, Chinese modernity will not succeed. So the question of transcendence, for example, in Mozambique is to distinguish between a kind of absolute transcendence and a Chinese transcendence. That's still a transcendence which would emphasize that Chinese philosophy and Chinese religions are not merely immanent.
Yeah.
So of course, today, after a series of failed revolutions, we still find people who say we have to go back to the 19th century Christian revolution in China to accomplish modernity. So there is still a kind of hope for a God which would save China. So this question is somehow intriguing, and I would wonder how you enter your position into this kind of debate.
Yeah.
The second question is a more detailed question. I have been a bit puzzled about your use of the word desire in the connection to purpose. Telos, purpose, and desire.
Yes.
Because at least if I follow Foucault's discussion of Christianity and the emergence of desire in the European context, desire is something very Christian. There is no desire in the antique world in a kind of substantialist sense. So there may be telos, there may be purpose, but desire is a Christian invention. And of course has been extremely influential into modern psychology, psychoanalysis, and so on. But Foucault wants to get rid of desire. So how could you imagine to get rid of desire in your proposition? The next point is concerning paradox. You said that all major schools, with some exceptions which have not been historically very influential, have been based on paradox, that is on Wu. That's what you said. And if we agree on this point, my question is, what is the way these schools deal with paradoxes? How do they deal with them? You have a passage in your paper on page 7 and page 8 where you emphasize that the main aspect to deal with this question is the problem of a single identity. So we have to get rid of a single identity to enter into a kind of paradoxical way of thinking and maybe even of living. But I'm interested in the way these different non-identical identities relate to each other. To which extent are there still positions? Positions a little bit linked to what Kai called facts. I mean, positions which we cannot easily change or transform, which we are somehow stuck in, and which we have to engage in to maybe at some point overcome that. So what I would be interested in is in which way is there struggle? I mean, struggle for identity and non-identity in their paradoxical relation in the picture you draw here. And I don't really see this. So maybe to make this point clear, I would say the question of paradoxical thinking and living emerges only when there's no way out. And one more point, 郭相, and this is also relating to what Kai said. In recent years in Taiwan, in this context of the Zhuangzi interpretation, there has been a lot of critique of 郭相 or questioning of Guoxiang and this tradition as being somehow too close to the imperial order of Chinese tradition. That is what Kai said, a kind of at least implicit affirmation of Confucian imperial order. So how would you think the critical potential of the Zhuangzi through Guoxiang? How do you think critique of Guoxiang? And what kind of relation do you see between hierarchy and spontaneity?
Okay, very rich, complicated questions and a lot of them. So let me try and back up. Your first question was on transcendence and immanence, and the Christian Revolution as leading to modernity. So I tend to think, and this probably applies to all three of these four questions, that mainly what I want to do is change the way they are framed, and I think there are things that are being assumed in the way the question is asked that I'd like to question. That's more the point here. So, where do I position myself on the question of transcendence? Transcendence, as I understand it, is in Chinese context has to do with the question of formlessness or indeterminacy, of wuxing or wu. And that is transcendent in the sense not of being higher necessarily, but of being a negation outside of any given thing. And the reason this is complicated or ambiguous, again, there's that word, I think is because when we talk about what the entity to be transcended is, there's a kind of equivocation, right? Because the ontological claim is that the real totality, the adequate notion of that entity is both the youxing and the wuxing parts of it. But the wuxing part of it, if we can use part here, which is the ground of the ban of it, is beyond and other than and a negation of the determinate part of it. It kind of reminds, somebody asked Spinoza in a letter, is it true that you affirm that the material universe is God, that matter is God? And Spinoza said, if by the material universe you mean a collection of things, no. Because I don't admit there are such things. Right? Your very conception of what there is to be transcended is what I'm contesting. So, because for Spinoza, there are no discrete things. And so he would say, what you're thinking of when you say matter is a bunch of objects? No, that's not God. But what you have been mistakenly calling those objects is actually substance, which is, infinite, active, and inseparable, indivisible. Okay? It's similar to that. Okay, so it depends on when you ask about transcendence and immanence, the question is transcendence of what? And I think that when that question is asked from the side of even that terminology, it's assuming an ontology which derives from theism, which is an ontology of finite things. So transcending finite things, yes, but immanent in them, in their constitution, is their own transcendence. They're self-transcending. Actually, this is where I would touch on your last question about critique, because I think the whole question of critique is not the indigenous way in which that problem would be addressed. The very idea of critique, of standing outside of a position with an independent, completely unrelated criterion that does not work through appealing to the motivations already immanent, I don't think is part of the conception. In other words, to motivate moral behavior or moral change, you have to pitch that in terms of something immanent, in terms of something, unless it's going to be coercive, and that would be yoga, right? So if I just say this is right, therefore do it, even though you don't want to at any level, then that kind of critique. It plays on that same conception of transcendence, which presupposes a definition of objects as discrete and as fully determinate. Same thing goes for your question about positions. I do not think it is an observed phenomenological fact that we have positions. Okay? Or that there are facts.
Identities. There are social identities.
No, there are what we are calling social identities in this conception, and you can do an easy gestalt shift any moment you like. I mean, there's never been a fact ever that has occurred that has not occurred in time with a future that is yet unknown, right? So what we call objectivity is sort of one of a two-step process. It always comes with waiting for further confirmation. This is the point, okay? It's constitutive of it that it's never quite finished. That's what it means to say the future exists. So if the future exists, and if the facts themselves are only determinate within time, then we're fixating on the determinate side and calling that objectivity, or this is my position. This I take to be Zhuangzi's point. Okay? Whenever I take a position, I'm also positing an alternate position from which my own position is questioned. So to take a position is to posit the questioning of my position. They're not two different things.
But does
So-
this exclude to take a position?
What's that?
Does this exclude?
No. So then that gets to your other question about paradox, right? So as I said,
and that's also the question about struggle.
exactly.
We have struggles of positions.
Exactly.
Obviously.
Exactly. So how do we
People
view
kill
that?
each other because of their positions.
That's right. So how do we view that? Okay.
Yeah.
And what are their ultimate purposes, or what positions are they actually? We can get into Hegel and the cunning of reason, perhaps here too, which is a key motif in notions of progress. What we think we're doing, what we're doing may not be the same thing, and I would even argue cannot be the same thing.
Yeah.
So whatever we recognize we're doing, sometimes good old Taoist paradoxical flip-floppy stuff, right? So you try to do the good, you try to advance the cause, and you reverse the cause, right? People have conflicts because there's necessarily fenbia, as I said, right? Necessarily your way. There will always be a taking a position. This I take to be Zhuangzi's view as well. Okay? There's no positionless. That's what it means to say there's no God's eye view, right? That means there's always a position, but that position is in a nimbus of its own uncertainty, definitionally. So you have to act, and you have to act according to this provisional sense of knowing what's what and what you're doing and what you're for. What you're for. We don't know what we're for. But we have to think we know what we're for, kind of. One version of this paper, I call it on sort of knowing. We sort of know. You sort of know, we sort of know what we're going to do after this class. We sort of know what we want out of life, right? And there's various levels of vagueness to that, phenomenologically speaking. But we tune this, calibrate it to an ideal picture of just facts that are sitting out there, right? And therefore somehow just see, I think that's just a prism through which to see what's always half objective, half non-objective, That's what I think it means to be objective. It's just never totally objective. And that goes for our own view of ourselves, our own position. So I say always conflict. I'd say conflict is internal, intrinsic. That also part of the Zhuangzi or the Tiantai position. So the Tiantai is called Xing E, right? Inherent evil. We were talking about this last week a little bit, right? In Zhuangzi it means you can't have a shi without a fei, and without yourself being a little bit in that fei, which means the conflict is in you, too. So I think it's a universal conflict read in tooth and claw in a certain way, okay? But this is the sort of brilliance of the Zhuangzi move. That's half the story, always there, and there's always another half of that story. So I think the whole model of there's certain things that are good, there's certain things we want, let's will them, develop a plan that we know in advance and go do them, and therefore realize our ideal, that's exactly what I'm questioning here. I don't think that's the only model. I don't think it's uniquely phenomenologically justified. I think it's based on very specific cultural premises, very specific ontological premises, and I would say that goes for, and so that goes back to that question about both critique and the question about progress. Now, I don't know what it means to save China. I don't really understand that there's a shared consciousness of which direction China should go in. I think there's going to be a lot of different views of that. One view could be if it takes Christianity to save China, that's worse than not saving China from the point of view of the world. So I don't know, but ultimately I don't think there's any way we can just establish values unilaterally sitting here.
Why could you say this was a strong statement. Could you say something?
Why would I? Well, I've said it could be said, and I'll tell you why it could be said. Because that would mean the end of one of the last places on earth that is not dominated by monotheistic thinking.
But is it true?
Yeah, I think so.
Or
German,
historically,
European societies are
No, it's
not
totally
very Christian, no, post-Christian.
They're deeply Christian.
Are they?
Yeah, well, post-Christian. I would say that because, as we just said, right, there's an assumption about the single identities of things. about non-ambiguous metaphysical presuppositions, about critique as the way things get changed by applying a standard of what is good to them and coercing them to accord with that standard. I say that's the...
Of course, that's not what I mean when I say critique, but this is another question.
Okay, but well, I mean, okay, but critique which is, let's say, privileged as in some way as, I guess you could say on a transcendent basis, something that's not imminent in the thing critiqued. You know, and I would say, you know, there are, of course, you asked how did the struggle go, how does Yowei relate to Wu-wei, and as I said, there's at least 50 different ways in different systems in China, right? Sometimes it's as ends and means, that's probably the typical way, right? Which is to say, that's the Buddhist two truths way, right? You take it, it's the raft in Buddhism, right? Very simple, very powerful model, right? The raft model is you make a decision, you make a commitment, you cling to that raft, right? It's a strict yes or no, facts, positions, right? This is good, this is evil, don't do that, do this. And if you let go of that raft, you drown, right? But what's the point of the raft? The point of the raft is to get beyond rafts, right? So a good raft is a raft that transcends rafts, that self-cancels, right? So that's Yowei, Dada, Wu-wei, right? But that doesn't mean that the Yowei, when it's there, that raft, you better damn well be, you know, strictly willing taking a position. There's a lot of variables.
Just at one point here, because Zhang Taiyan, when he thinks about the Qi-Mu-Le, I would somehow say that with the Zhuangzi, he wants to be a revolutionary who cancels revolution after revolution has succeeded.
Yes.
So, would you agree to this?
I think his thinking is very much along this model, right? The Wu-Lun and so on, yes. But I would say, you know, when you look at post-Opium War Chinese intellectuals, you're looking at people in an emergency situation, right? And so, you know, it's very instructive and it's very interesting to see what thought emerges there, but that's like someone trying to put out a fire, you know. It's, I wouldn't take it as typical or representative. I wouldn't take it as a good guide for all times, you know. And there are a lot of different emergencies in human history. Maybe, possibly, yes. And that historicizing move maybe is another way of looking at what I'm talking about. I mean, you can recognize something as a necessary position to take without thinking that it's ultimately true for all time. Right?
We have one more question. Rosalind.
This is back to Zhongyong.
Yeah.
I think that both in Zhongyong and the Monks, there's a, you said the nature of material things just haven't given the nature, including the
天命之谓性.
Yeah, 天命之谓性. And 孟子天之所谓性. Maybe the heaven is labeled will and is not a possibility, unperson. But if the nature is, it means the potential things have, especially men have, and it needs to be fulfilled in the life. If this is, maybe there are some purposive dimension in this. Because everything just need to fulfill their nature. This is the purpose. Maybe the purpose is not from heaven, but it's among the real things. So, is there possible?
Yes, it's a great question. I mean, this is what I was getting at when talking about the sheets of drum. The Zhongyong is a good case. Monks is a little more, to me, a little more complicated. But I'd say in the Zhongyong and the sheets of drum, which both take this kind of a position, again, there is a grounding of moral norms in the natural or the metaphysical. But that does not, not as personal and purposive. So and this is one of the things I want to get at. You can still have a moral metaphysic, and it's going to be very different if you remove the intention and the consciousness that is judging. I think in the case of the Zhongyong, and in the case of Zhongyong, right, you have okay, so that Zhong is a negation point of all the determinate emotions, right? And it is made equivalent to the highest good, but at the same time it is made minimally determinate. In fact, what makes it good is its 无分别性, its 中性, right? That move happens a lot in Chinese thought, actually, right? Where this nice little kind of Mobius strip between valuelessness and therefore the highest value, right? 无己而太己 is another example, right? Or you could say the Zhuangzi mind, 圣人中用心若镜, right? That's a value, but it's a value because it embraces no values, right? So it's not 心三如来乐, and it's like 无修无生, right? At the end of the 中庸. To me, that maps nicely onto the 记之者善, right? 记之者 yes 善, but 一定is not 善, right? Even Cheng Hao would say that, right? Mengzi's case, I rather like Frank Perkins's read on that, where there is, which actually maps nicely onto what I was just saying about Ziporyn Zhongyou. His view is that heaven has a command for all creatures, like for grasses to grow high and other things to grow low. That doesn't mean heaven itself is long or short. The thing for humans to do is good, or 仁义礼智. That doesn't mean heaven is 仁义礼智, right? And it may be that 仁义礼智 is meant to fail, and that's perfectly fine with heaven. That's still the command. So there's plenty of ways you can play that out without making it a teleology quite in that. The nature of the teleology will change if that source is not a noose, a conscious, purposive thing. I didn't answer Fabian's question about purpose, though. And desire, yeah. So, I don't know, is that? Okay. More on that Mengzi, though. That's not a full answer, but sometime. Yeah, I think this is mainly a nomenclature question. I don't think I'm using desire in the way Foucault wants to use it. For me, we could. I suppose we would have to hash out where the lines are drawn and the appropriateness of that. But for me, I'm using it as the most general possible term for any type of drive that conceives of a good ahead of time, making a preference of one thing after another, and intends it. So on that, another way to talk about the atheism problem, actually, I would say this. From the time of the Phaedo, from the time of Socrates, the Platonic Socrates at least, you have this notion that we desire things because they are good. Right? Symposium, let's say, okay? Eros in the symposium, that would be desire for me. That seems a pretty strong example, right? And there the idea is that, the good is reflected in various things, which arouses this pursuit of them. I'm happy to use that word instead. This erotic desire for them, and that has various stages and more pure forms, right? And that it's ultimately a reflected desire for the good. So the root cause of desire is the good. And I would say the typical atheist move, which I see in all the early Chinese philosophers, including Mengzi, who says 可欲之为善, right? And that could be ambiguous in these two ways, but I would argue, and I have argued, and I want that to have been arguing strongly, that that is in the spirit of the Spinoza definition, which is that we call things good because we desire them, we do not desire them because they're good, or even that we think they're good. So the desire comes first. I see that in Xunzi and I see that in Mengzi. The word is yu. But
hasn't there been this whole tendency there to suppress desires and later on Chinese philosophy, or to correct them? This may be one of my doubts, which I had when I was reading the book.
There's always from Xunzi on, there's a very strong impulse to adjust, mutually adjust, and control and regulate desire. That's the main problem. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely, that's because it's the ground of the entire system of value, right? So a hierarchy of desires has to be designed. This happens in Mengzi in the Dati Xiaoti.
And why is it the ground of
because there's no other
values?
Yeah.
This sounds
Because this is where this paradigm shift I think is really important. In the absence of a divine command, right, or in the absence of a plain command,
where should the normative power come?
Yeah. Every appeal made. Look at Mengzi's use of food analogies, for example. Look at Xunzi's use of collective strength and the satisfaction of desires in the justification for ritual, for example. There's never any higher ground than the satisfaction of desires. Actually, look at the analytes. Ru'anzi wager. Now, I define desire very broadly. Ru'anzi wager, you remember this one? This is the 3-year mourning period, as normative as you can get. 天下之通商业, right?
So it's about 天 again.
天下, in the world.
Okay, sorry.
It's the universal print, right? And Zaiwo, does everyone know this? Actually, let's talk about this for a second. Zaiwo, right, comes to Confucius and he says, this 3-year mourning period, that's just too damn long, right? Reformer, critique, okay?
So Kongzi doesn't give him an answer.
No, he does give him a great answer.
He just...
Wait. First, let's look at what Zaiwo says. He says, I'm going to give you 2 reasons why this should be changed. He gives you rational reasons, right? One is, look, nature, model from nature. Everything in the world, 1 year is a cycle, right? 4 seasons, crops, blah, 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 right? We should model ourselves on nature, 1 year period, right? That's rational. Second reason, pragmatic. He says, look, if you have the Junzi and he's out of commission for 3 years, right, so everything's going to go all to hell, right? So it's bad for everybody, and it's out of sync with the cosmos, okay? So why do we do it? And what does Confucius says? He says, Ru'anzi wager. If you are at peace doing this,
accommodating him.
He says, go ahead and do it. So a criterion is positive there. It's on.
Behind his back, he scolds him.
Behind his back, he scolds him. But first he says, now the Junzi, of course, he shames him, right? He socially shames him. He says, a Junzi, on the other hand, would not be on, okay? But if you're on, then do it, okay? So this is about group inclusion, I call coherence, right, within a group, with an ultimate appeal to how nothing beyond, whether it's nature or pragmatics, to how that is experienced. And then he leaves, and Kongzi says, Zaiwo's not ren, right? Now, first of all, that's a very, very mild critique.
Is it really? I don't think it really. Sounds really.
Who ren? There's no living person who Confucius calls ren. No living person.
Who ren as a negative sounds very scornful.
I don't think so. I think ren is the highest thing you can attain. So he is not ren. He's not, an exemplary person, and he has admitted that. That's all. And he uses that as a teaching moment for his other students. Right? But he does not critique that student on that basis, okay? If you really, deep down, fully, then you really should do it. I take it like that. Not that I want everyone to take that. That would be terrible. That would be the end of the world, of course. That's why it has to be used as a negative example for others. But he asks him the question. He wants, of course, I would go around and say, actually, no, I'm blind. But if he doesn't do that, Kongzi has no other recourse. He can't say, heaven wants you to, so do it. He doesn't say, it's the convention, so do it. He doesn't say, it's just right, so do it. He says, Ru'anzi wager.
But still, I find this analysis very inspiring, illuminative. But again, what you are saying is that the only normative power available to Confucius comes from desire, or the satisfaction of desire. I don't understand this.
No, desire, but that desire is very broad. It includes social desires. It includes ethical desires. Okay, ethical desires, which are part of.
These are not individual desires, maybe.
They're Christian sense. No, they're second-order desires. I mean, so Mengzi is very clear about this, right? Right? He says, look, you should love every part of your own body, and every part of your own body has its own desires. You know that? Like a hand wants to do stuff, and an eye wants to. They all want to do stuff. You want to satisfy them all. That's the only good. The only good is what satisfies the most of them. But then he says sometimes there's a shongjiang and yu choice to be made. Okay, but 我所欲, right? Shongjiang is also 我所欲, right? What I desire. Why do I desire it more? Because he says, well, if you had a gardener who nourished the more valuable plants at the expense of the less valuable at the expense of the more valuable, that would be a bad gardener. The only criterion he gives is, if you had a choice between nourishing your finger and your shoulder, which would you nourish? Well, if you just nourish your finger and both are in danger, you're going to lose both. So the appeal is simply to the holism of desires, what satisfies the greater number of mutually coherent desires, including a desire for the coherence of desires. There's nothing outside of desires involved in that appeal. That's the one point in Mencius, the furthest he goes in trying to ground his mind. That passage 6, 8, 15, 14, 15, right? Dati Shakti, right? And follows the mind thinks about how to coordinate those desires. Same thing he says in 1A7.
But isn't like something like xing? Hard to translate, but xing or benxing is something like this kind of core of normativity.
It's a core of desire. It's a core of desire.
But not in Jushi, not in later readings.
Well, that,
not in
pause for
later
a second.
readings.
I'm not sure about that. That's absolutely more complicated in Jushi, yes. After Chang.
Maybe in Mencius, yeah. But
maybe in Mencius, because what Mencius says, he says, child falling into a well, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't say, he explicitly says that's wu wei, right? He says it's not I'm applying a standard, it's not I'm thinking about what's good, it's not I'm trying to please the parents, I just have an impulse to do it. He doesn't even say you do it. And he doesn't say you don't have other desires like to kill the child and ridicule the parents. You might. It doesn't matter for him. He needs to just identify that you have one spontaneous desire among all your other food, your love for roast, right? And your love for that among and on the same level as those, there's this other kind of desire that has a relationship to those other desires that unifies, makes them coherent. And
I understand you better now.
Yeah.
I think
but Jushi, that's really, I mean, then you have of course a much more complex question. I ended the book there.
You're looking for a third volume.
Yeah. But I do think that just normativity per se is something that should be our last hypothesis because it's a very, globally speaking, an incredibly bizarre idea.
Yeah.
Right? It makes intuitive sense to us because we're used to it, I think. But if you try to abstract it, when someone tells you you should be good because you should be good, it just doesn't. It's a tautology.
We're really looking forward to your next book. This was a
you
great show, great exercise of comparative philosophy, and a great example. Thank you very much.